Most instructors start right in with a topic. And we're going to do something completely different today. I'm going to give you some motivation, as actors say, about why you would even want to be interested in this. So anybody have an idea where this is? Hawaii is a good guess, but not quite. No, it's not Cambodia, but good try. Not Florida. No, it's Vietnam. And it turns out to be on Phu Quoc Island in Vietnam. Let me tell you the story. A couple of years ago, I was invited to give some classes and lectures there, and was treated wonderfully well. Great people, smart testers. But the only thing that I found curious was that employers don't like to give their staff time to go to conferences, lectures. And so almost all my stuff was done on Friday afternoon, all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And I had 2 consecutive weekends like that, which meant that during the week, I was a tourist. And I enjoyed myself. I went over to Phu Quoc Island, and it's right here off the coast. It's just, it's in the Gulf of Thailand, south of Cambodia. It's about an hour-and-a-half flight from Ho Chi Minh City. And most of my time was spent like this, sitting on the beach. Now, I live in Utah. I'm a desert guy. And to see beach and waves and ocean is like fantastic. So I sat on the chair most of the time. The exception to that was when the watermelon lady came by. She would come down the beach and she had a big stick across her shoulders with sacks on each end of watermelons. And you would get up and go to the watermelon lady and buy one, and she'd cut it up for you, and then you sit down in your chair again. You know, it was not bad. Not bad. Now, on one of my trips, though, to the beach to see the watermelon lady, I walked by this woman who was reading a book. And you just don't see many people reading books on the beach, you know, doing other things. So I went over and I looked and I asked, and it turns out to be a book called The Lean Startup. And I'd heard about this book, I think, but I didn't have a copy. And so I asked a little bit about it, and sooner or later I went and bought my own copy. And as I read, I discovered that there are a lot of things in the lean startup idea that I think are useful for testers. And so that's what I want to share with you today. The lean startup philosophy and value for testers. You can reach me at email or follow me on Twitter if you like, if you have any questions or comments later. So this is what we're going to talk about today. I want to introduce you to the idea of lean startups, and then to a guy named Eric Ries, who kind of invented this idea. Then we'll talk about the foundation of lean startup. There are 5 basic principles that you should know. And then we're going to talk about how I think these apply to us as testers. So that's our schedule for today. So what is a lean startup? Well, a lean startup you could think of as an organization attempting to begin or succeed under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And Shekhar Ghosh, who's a professor at Harvard, tells us, reports these statistics. 90% of all startups fail to meet their projections. Okay. 80% fail to meet their ROI projections, their financial projections. The 90% have to do with product and schedule and delivery and so on. And a whopping 40% investors basically lose everything. So don't know whether you want to participate in a lean startup or invest in one, but these are the numbers that you should expect to see. So startups have a big struggle. Eric Ries had an impressive record with startups. He was co-founder of Catalyst Recruiting, which was an organization that was focused on connecting students with employers, and it failed. He worked at There Inc., which was a virtual world simulation. People could join in and play with each other virtually, and it failed. He helped form another simulation company called IMVU. It actually succeeded and is still going today, but he later stepped down. And through all of this experience, he, instead of just focusing on the failures, and trying to do it again and doing it wrong again, he tried to put his learning and other learning together. And so in 2011, he wrote a book called Lean Startup, and this is the book that I discovered on the beach. He discovered a number of things, one of which is that the things that we do in regular organizations, when we get in trouble, just don't work. For example, in regular organizations, when we don't know, we try and gather more information. Right? We do studies, we assign committees, we do research. When we're unsure in classic organizations, we tend to give more direction. I want you to do this, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. And it turns out these things just don't work. In a lean startup, there's often not more information to gather. You kind of know it all. You wish you knew more, but you don't. And sometimes you don't want to give specific direction, you want people to go experiment. So these are things that he learned and published in this book. Now, the 5 principles of lean startups are these: customer development, the build, measure, learn loop, the idea of minimum viable product, validated learning, and one metric that matters. I want to take you through those 5 and kind of in general, and then we'll come back and talk about them in terms of testing. So customer development. This is not a new idea with Rice, but it comes from a fellow named Steve Blank, who wrote this wonderful book called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And Blank says this: startups fail from lack of customer development, not product development failure. Okay, the number one reason why startups fail is they simply don't have a market. They have a great idea, they have a great product, they have a great service, and nobody wants to buy it. Anybody remember Webvan? Tell us about Webvan. What do you remember? Yep. Great, thanks. It's the number one biggest .com flop in history. Taking like $500 million of investor money with it. The numbers are frighteningly bad. Why anybody would invest in this? When they went public, they had already losses of $50 million on net income of $395,000. And ultimately they blew through about $500 million. Great, like I say, great concept. It's just nobody wanted this service, at least the way it was then. And so Blank talks about the importance of customer discovery, customer validation, making sure these people are real, customer creation, company building, and all this stuff has to happen before product development or concurrently with product development. Okay? Lots of lean startups have great products, but no customers. So that's not the way you want to start. Okay. The second key idea of lean startup is what's called the build, measure, learn loop. The idea here is we start with ideas about a product, and then we build something. We then have a product that we can put in front of customers or potential customers and measure their interest. Then from that measurement, we gather data that hopefully we learn something about our product and our customers. And then we cycle around through that. Now, every cycle through the build, measure, learn loop, we can ask the question, should we persevere or should we pivot? Persevere just means, should we continue on the path that we're on now, trying one more build, measure, learn loop? Or is it time to just pivot? That is, just totally change our direction and go try something else. And it takes a lot of courage to pivot, right? To say, this was really a bad idea. It looked good at the time, but it's just a bad idea. So that's the build, measure, learn loop. The third you probably heard of already. We talk about this a lot in Agile. It's the minimum viable product. It's what could I build quickly right now to see if I have customers, to see if anybody's interested in this product. Do you know Zappo shoes? They didn't start with a giant warehouse of shoes. They started by going to various shoe vendors, retailers in their area, taking pictures of shoes, posting them on a website, and saying, if you'll order these, we'll get them to you. And then what they did, if anybody ordered, they actually went down to that retailer and bought the shoes and sent them. Okay? There's no reason to build a giant warehouse. There's no reason to build millions of dollars of inventory if you don't even know whether this thing's going to work or not. In the book, Lean Startup, there are all kinds of great examples of people that simulated on paper what their product was ultimately going to do, simply because they didn't want to take the time and effort and expense to actually build the product until they knew it was going to work. So, here's kind of minimum viable product. What I'd really like to have is a fancy donut. But, I'd settle initially for a donut. That's one view. Now, there's another view of minimum viable product that's kind of been going around, and I think this is a great example. Our minimum viable product might be some kind of transportation device. Okay? The top way is not the way to do it. We don't start by building one wheel and then two wheels and then the body of the car and then finally the car, each time the user is happy. Because nowhere in 1, 2, and 3 have we actually produced a product that somebody could use. And the minimum viable product is more like the bottom one. We start with a skateboard, that at least gets somebody from here to there. And then maybe we add a handle to it, and then maybe we turn that into a bicycle. Every one of these is a transportation device, every one of which could serve somebody's need. So whenever you think about minimum viable product, think about the second one here. It's the simplest version of the product that could actually do something for somebody. Okay, so that's minimum viable product. Number 4 is what's called validated learning. And this is Will Rogers. If you don't know Will Rogers, he was a 1930s, 40s humorist. But this is one of his favorite phrases. He says, it isn't what we don't know that gives us trouble. It's what we know that ain't so. It's belief that we have that about our customer or about our product, that we all nod and go, yeah, that's the way it is, but in fact it isn't. It's what we know that ain't so. Stay away from that. This is a great quotation from Henry Ford. He says, if I had asked my customers they would have said they wanted faster horses. You may have had this experience also, that you talk to customers and you say, what is it you're looking for? What would you really like to have? What would solve your problem in a way that you just can't imagine today? And they go, faster horses, greener screens, or smaller screens, or something. You know, had you asked a person a few years ago if they'd like to have a cell phone, nobody'd be interested in that. Till it happened, and then everybody wants it. Now, let me give you a touch of sideline information here. There is no evidence at all anywhere that Henry Ford ever said this. But it's a great quotation, you know, it's one of those things he should have said, but apparently he didn't. Okay. The fifth principle of lean startups is something called one metric that matters. And you've all seen these kinds of charts before. The number of customers. The number of customers is growing by leaps and bounds. Okay, looks good. Feels good. Maybe a better question is, what does it actually cost to add each new customer? And what kind of revenue do they bring? If it's costing you $100 to add each new customer, and each one is only bringing $80 in average revenue, Dave here says, You know the old joke about you lose a little bit on each one and make it up in volume? It doesn't really work that way. Okay, how about this one? Additional revenue per customer. The number of customers actually using the product. You know, I might have 10,000 people a day downloading my app. And what if nobody actually uses it? You know, people sign on once, and then they abandon it or delete it. That's not what you're looking for. So the idea in one metric that matters is that there is one metric that you need in a startup at some point in time. Now that measurement may change over time, and that's okay. But there's one thing that's absolutely vital for us to know right now. That's the one metric that matters. Okay? Now, let's go on to the next part here. Most of us as testers are not going to be part of lean startups. You know, we're not going to be knocking on the door here and being invited in. They get around to us as testers long after. So the question then is, are there lessons for us in this lean startup thing? And I think there are. The first question you could ask is focusing on customer development. Ask, who are the customers of your testing? And I'd like to suggest that the customers of your testing are your management, your developers, and your users. Who else are the customers of your testing? Who else gets benefit from it, would want you to do it? Product owners, right? Designers? Shareholders? Stakeholders? Good. These are all excellent answers. What do you think's on the next slide? The next slide is who are not the customers of testing, and it's this. It's the process. Okay? Many of us in testing have gotten it wrong. We focus on the process. I even have a little Russian folk song that I sing in kind of a minor key. Follow the process, follow the process. You know, it's not going to help. Okay? It's not going to help. I don't know how many times in my consulting career I've asked testers, why are you doing this? And what's the answer they give me? Yeah, we've always done it this way. This is the process. This is how we do things here. And then I ask questions like, well, does it serve the product owner? Does it serve the stakeholder? Does it serve the developer? Does it serve the users? And they go, what does it matter? It's the process. So, you will follow the process and you'll be treated like the rebel forces. How many have worked in that kind of an environment? I know not now, not where you work now, of course, but you have? It was the process was the most important thing. And I don't think it is. I think that if we continue to follow the process, we will ultimately be without constituency. We'll be without people who want our services. So, in terms of customer development, start by asking these kind of questions. What do they need and what do they want? Now, need and want may be different. Okay? What do they want from us as testers? What things do they actually value? Okay? What do they think contributes to their success? What are they willing to pay for? And if you're struggling as a tester finding answers to those questions, then you really need to walk back a ways and start with, who are my customers and why am I here? Who do I serve? Okay. Now, the build, measure, learn loop should look a lot like the exploratory testing loop that you're familiar with. Okay? Because that's what exploratory testing is all about. We want to learn something, so we do some test design, we do the test execution. Then we learn something from that, we do some analysis, and then we go back and cycle through that again. So build, measure, learn is not very different from exploratory testing, which you already know about. Now, minimum viable product. This is the third key idea. You've probably seen this pyramid before. The ideal today, start with automated unit tests and then add some automated component tests and integration tests. Finally, GUI system tests should be kind of at the minimal. And then some manual exploratory testing at the top, maybe with John Bach's session-based testing ideas. What I'd like to suggest to you is, so often we start to build test cases from the bottom up. We start with trying to build all the automated test cases in the beginning, and then move on to all the automated component tests. We kind of see, because this triangle has a nice solid base, we should start at the bottom and move on. Minimum viable testing, or minimum viable product, suggests that maybe we could write minimum viable tests, but we don't have to do everything at once. Do a slice of that. And then if we need more tests, if we need more coverage, okay, then add some more in the next iteration or the next cycle. Go through and take another chunk. Okay? Does that make sense? And then take another chunk. Don't try and do it all at once. Don't try and boil the ocean or eat the elephant or all those other pithy sayings you've heard over the years. Just build what you need when you need it. And then ask yourself, now, what other tests do I, now that I've done these, what other tests do I want to create? Okay, validated learning. We can do lots of experiments. Testers are, in fact, experimenters. And well, we could run tests on our users, and we could run tests on our systems. We could run all kinds of tests. Don't just assume that we know. Don't just assume performance is acceptable. Don't assume that quality is acceptable. Don't assume that results are acceptable or user interface design is acceptable. Okay? Do experiments. That's what we as testers are. We're experimenters. Okay. Now the fifth one is the one metric that matters. And I want to suggest that it's really important for us to ignore vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are those metrics that make us look good or feel good, but really don't tell us anything about the quality of our service. For example, what does number of test cases planned tell you? Well, you've been working hard planning all those test cases, but what does it tell us about the quality of the product? It doesn't really tell us anything. But again, we can look good here. How about the number of test cases written? Well, again, we planned a whole bunch. Now we've written a whole bunch. That's apparently good. Number of test cases executed. Number of test cases that finally pass. Again, these are what I call vanity metrics. They make us look good. They make us feel good. Test managers, we have test managers here. Test managers generally love to feel like they're in control. And these numbers do that, right? Oh, I have this planned, and this is actual, and now I know where I am, and everything is wrong. So, I would invite you not to participate in success theater. If you want to see a prime example, of course, go to the airport and watch the success theater that goes on there every day. You know that every once in a while some of the people in TSA try and sneak bad stuff through. Right? You know what the numbers are that gets through? It's like 95% of the bad stuff. It's theater. Theater is okay for certain people, but crazy nuts, machetes. But most theater is just that. It's not real. So don't participate. Now, this is Ivory Madison, who gave a wonderful talk. It's called Bonfire of the Vanity Metrics. It's a great title, isn't it? And she asked these key questions. She says, do the metrics really measure the success of your core business? Do the metrics directly relate to the quality of the software, the application? Is there some kind of cause and effect relationship that because we did these kinds of tests, things got better? Can you do that? Do these metrics lead you to your next steps? These are the questions that we should be asking. Now, one of the difficulties with the one metric that matters is there is no metric for everybody. There's not even a metric for you at every point in time in your organization. The one metric that matters changes. And so it's difficult, to come up with. All right. So that's what I want to tell you about the foundation of lean startups. Customer development, build, measure, learn, loop, minimum viable product, validated learning, one metric that matters. I think each one of these has a value for us as testers. So let me give you one last little bit of grandfatherly advice here. Be open to serendipity. What is serendipity? A word I don't hear very often anymore. Yeah, it's just unlooked for. It's something valuable that was unlooked for and just kind of fell in your lap. Okay? And for me, the lean startup idea just literally fell in my lap on a beach in Vietnam. Be open to serendipity. Be open to things that are outside the testing world that might be of benefit to you. So that's what I have to say to you today. Thanks for coming. This is my third invitation to speak at ENSQC. I always love coming up here. It's a great conference. Hope you have a good time. Thanks.